Hello, g'day mate, and welcome to the Orang Putih Kita show. Today's show, I'm here with Ben Uzair and Jared Abdul Rahman, and we are going to be having a conversation about all sorts of topics, the art community, hospitality, the industries here in Sabah, in entertainment. But before we get into the conversation, let's cue the intro.
Hey, samalah kita. Hey, orang putih kita ba.
Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming along. Awesome to have you here on the show.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Congratulations for your show, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. We just started, and actually we moved into a new studio here. We started at a temporary studio and now getting used to the new setting, everything. But yeah, really appreciate you coming along because I know I'm friends with both of you and we've had a lot of good discussions before. And I feel like this is a topic I've been bringing up on the previous episodes a lot, but it's easy to start with because it's topical, is the MCO. You know, right now we're still going through the effects of the pandemic in MCO. So maybe can I ask you guys, like, how's that been affecting you and what's been happening?
I think I learned a lot of things during MCO. I'm a broadcaster for a local radio station, and we're considered essential services. So I remembered while everyone was on lockdown, I had to go to work at least 3 times a week. So it was fun trying to show the letter prepared by my boss, Hello Boss Paris. It was fun just trying to convince police, those who are at the, those roadblocks, and show them the letter. And sometimes you come across people who might not hear about KK12 FM. So I have to convince them. So, kau pernah dengar anti-patrin kah? Oh, itu radio stations.
So in a sense, it was good marketing.
I know,
well.
in a way.
That's funny.
So long story short, I had to go into work and we have to report about, the COVID-19 situation, especially in Sabah. Thankfully, compared to other states in Malaysia and compared to other countries even, we did quite well, I would say. It was just a learning experience. Also, I think we remembered that all these food deliveries were on a rise. So it was fun trying to order stuff, and sometimes you get discounts from trying all these different applications on your phone. And it's a learning experience. I had a chance to review a hotel in Kota Kinabalu actually gave me free stuff. And they say, can you try to do a video of you like opening the box and things like that? So that's how I got started by doing videos on my Instagram. Yep. And since MCO, that's what I've been doing videos and doing reviews and write-ups of various hospitality establishments here in KK. I think it's a responsibility that we as KKNs should support our local business. That's what is asked of us anyways. So I'm just doing my part. Yeah. So to answer your question, I think all of us learned something. You have your own show here. It's wonderful, by the way.
Thank you.
And I think Jared and I did a project together. And Jared, tell him.
But before all that, MCO for me was, I think, the complete opposite of Ben's. So I imagine you had to go out every morning.
Yeah.
Yep. Whereas for me, it's a struggle to even find an excuse to wake up every morning.
Look at him, they're kurus sudah.
Yeah.
I don't want to body shame you, but he has shared with me many times how much he has lost weight. So,
I mean, not that I wasn't eating. I think I just wasn't eating the things that I should have been eating. Or, and obviously sleep pattern, whatever. Trying to be a good stay-at-homer and not leaving the house to find a reason to go see Sarah. So obviously finding ways to still stay in touch during the MCO period.
Nasib ada video call.
Yes. I mean, we were watching videos together separately.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
No. How interesting.
Yes. To the point where we found that, that was fun, that worked. But then what was even more connected, what helped being connected even more was me watching through a video call her watching. Okay, that sounds weird. That sounds weird. Let me start again.
I'm trying to imagine that.
Inception.
Video call, but then on her side is where
The video.
the movie is of what we're watching. So that way we can actually talk at the same time rather than after the movie's done. Oh yeah, did you enjoy it? Oh yeah, it was all right. It's like, okay, good night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reminds me of that quote on Hercules. People do crazy things where they're in love. So yeah, Sarah, I know. So
Yeah.
hi.
Yeah.
Um,
I know the struggle, man.
Yeah. So I mean, having said this, obviously, there are many things that there are many things that I'm thankful for, which I know a lot of people did not have the privilege of. I mean, a simple being able to go still buy groceries, etc. Even though I was unemployed, I still had it much better than a lot of people.
Yeah.
During MCO, for me, I think it was a time for reflection, obviously, but planning, trying to prepare project proposals and trying to get ideas off the ground, or at least do that initial thing. So one of the projects that came out of MCO was the recent art exhibition at SICC, which Ben was also involved in,
Yep.
called Masked. Yes.
That's a tongue twister. Try to say mask like
Yeah.
10 times fast.
Obviously, during MCO, when you don't really have anyone to talk to, on paper it looks fine, but then when you have to say it to people, it just sounds weird.
So with Mask, what was the aim? What was the goal of because you had quite a number of different local artists and
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that one thing that everyone saw during MCO was people trying to get creative. Whether that's the thing that they normally do, or literally this is how they're trying to get through the day to address their boredom. So anything from baking, workout videos, etc., etc. But so a lot of content was coming out on social media, and Masked, which was an idea by SICC. Basically, the intention was to provide a platform to showcase these creativities that came out of MCO. Yes, obviously, the majority of it was visual art, so paintings, photography. But we tried to make a point of including all kinds of creativities.
Yeah, it's been a particularly difficult time for the creative industry and for artists, because artists, I mean, generally are struggling in general.
Yeah.
Unless they're like super famous already. The majority of artists really struggle just to make ends meet when things are normal. So
Yeah.
with this, everything shutting down and events, and like even with musicians, not having live gigs, and there's been a challenge. What do you think is some ways that we can work around that, or to be better prepared for the future?
So one thing that I definitely wanted to address through the Masked exhibition, as well as basically anything that comes out now, is trying to make a point to demonstrate to the broader community that actually artists aren't as useless as you think they might be. Because one thing that happened during MCO was this poll, public opinion on rating these different careers and how essential they are. And obviously the artist was the least essential.
Really?
Yeah. And it depends on your understanding of what an artist is. If you're an artist who just sits in the bedroom and paints, and literally your artwork doesn't mean anything to anyone other than yourself, then probably it's not very essential. But what people need to realize is that a lot of people are artists in different ways. In fact, a lot of the essential careers, occupations involve a different kind of artistry. So for example, architects, graphic designers, furniture designers, everything that we do, fashion designers, involves artistry, right? So that's something that I want to highlight, at least in this new normal, and also to support, to do, I mean, even more so to support the art community.
What do you think is behind that? I mean, it's not just local, like worldwide. I think the arts are undervalued. Like even in school systems, it's like made as the lazy subject, and it's like it's generally thought as something to do if you don't succeed in something academic. You know,
See, that's the problem with our education system. We go to school and we are told, instructed with a cane, that you should have straight A's. B's are acceptable. C's are, crossing the line a little bit. Once you see the red marks, that's when you'll get a whack. And that's the education system that failed us.
Yeah.
That trying to pursue academics is more important than us appreciating art. And when we talk about art, we talk about music appreciation, dancing, drawing, visual, performing arts, that sort of thing. It was only until I went to the States that I have a full appreciation about what arts is all about, because in school, I don't draw, I don't sing, I don't dance. It was only when I went overseas that I realized that arts should be something that enriches you. Life is not all about getting A's. And we've heard a lot of times all these students who pass their SPMs and their examinations, flying colors. But they get depressed because they don't get their scholarship, or they go into university not getting the course that they want.
It doesn't.
It's a flaw. It's a huge flaw. So I hope that there is some emphasis with arts appreciation. And I hope that, it's election season. Shall we talk a little bit about politics? That hopefully, whoever the new minister involved in education, innovation, and all of these things would try to make this a priority.
Hopefully. I mean, imagine like the MCO without art as well. Because most people, they turn to video, like even movies. Like, that's art.
Yes. I mean, all of this, everything here, the very fact of speaking, communication, technically is related to an art form. I mean, it's all storytelling. Yes.
Everything is about telling stories.
Correct. Yeah. So yes, can you imagine MCO without art?
And maybe it did. Hopefully it's because I saw a lot of people turning to creativity during the MCO, or finding hobbies that they maybe they previously like wanted or desired, but now they finally had the time to do. Hopefully that builds an appreciation of arts as well.
And to answer your previous question just now about what should artists do, I think right now, more than ever, crucially, artists should build up personal branding. I find that lacking, especially with our artists in Sabah. And I really, really hope that the artists would make effort to polish their personal branding. I think we are too relaxed with the way we market ourselves. And there are a handful of artists out there with, and they make effort, with flashy, resumes, biodata, that sort of thing. I wish that is something that a lot of our artists would do. And not just that, little things. I teach soft skills to corporate companies, and also being invited to government ministries to talk about how you dress up properly, how do you speak well, how do you converse. All of these things are important too. I find it cringy when there's an artist who would complain about life on social media. And, when they do that, it will set the tone, or perhaps the fan would say, no, I adore you, I worship you for your music, but, having that unpolished thoughts and posting it freely on social media, you immediately would change the thought of that.
You change the public perception of you.
I mean, I think I definitely see what you mean. Facebook, social media in general.
I don't want to take away from, having that right to free speech, that sort of thing. But again, as an artist, you're out there You're at the front.
Unless it's poetry as well, because poetry sometimes you say what you want.
Okay, yes. So definitely, especially if what they use is their own personal page to market their art and essentially their business, as well as doing their random personal rants. It can kind of, what's the word? Cross-contaminate, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, artists can set up their own artist Facebook page, keep it separate.
Or have a balance.
Yes.
It's okay to rant.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone had to go through a very tough time during RMCO, MCO, whatever period you want to call it. But at the end of the day, it's like, enough is enough. Let's do something about it rather than cakap.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
I see what you mean now.
That's in general. I think people complain a lot, but it's okay to complain. I mean,
yes, absolutely. We're humans.
But we also have to be looking for a solution.
Yes. Yes.
It's not complaining without an end. There has to be like, okay, how are we going to get around
Exactly.
this? What's this? It's got to be constructive. Otherwise, you're just throwing it into the wind, and all it does is it can bring the mood down of a lot of people.
And we saw with the government providing a lot of efforts, and I know Jared is trying to sign up for a project with
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not a secret. I'm just joking.
So these are things that I think artists should get on board with.
Yeah.
And I know several who are really excited and they're trying to do their proposals, and I look forward to, seeing the fruits of their labor.
Yeah. It's about, I think, being resourceful.
Yes.
Which obviously relates to the topic of the gig economy. And because there are a lot of freelancers. I mean, we can't be expected, I say we meaning our generation, wherever that cutoff is, I don't know. We can't be expected to do things the same way that our parents did things because it's different. All those jobs are filled. If we want those jobs, we have to wait for people to pass away. Obviously, touch wood, don't want that to happen. We have to find our own way. And part of our own way is freelancing, and part of freelancing and finding your own business, being self-employed, is being resourceful. So you don't just wait for someone to offer you a job. You actually have to go out and find it. Now, should artists be expected, every single artist be expected to go pitch and be expected to go harass people for proposals? I don't know. It certainly helps to have the skills. But especially now with MCO and this pandemic situation, times are tight that it won't hurt to have these skills.
Yeah. I agree, because artists, they are entrepreneurs as well. So rather than depending on jobs to come to them, they should go out and also create opportunities. And they also have to understand and going back to personal branding, with jobs now being very scarce, you're fighting for that piece of the pie.
Yeah.
So you might as well go all out.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there's a way that you can fight for the piece of the pie, and then when you get that piece of the pie, you can share it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the community here is very tight-knit. So, if something is possible that it could be shared, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think going back to something you said before about the education system, and I think this is a crucial point of where things start as well. Like even these soft skills, why are they not being taught? Like we've known social media has been, it's not a new thing anymore. We keep calling it new, but it's not new. It's been around long enough that it should be integrated. Branding, marketing, I mean, these are part of the things. But also with like the education system, and this is something that I often think about here is, and it's connected to arts, is that ability for critical thinking. And I think that's not being taught. And that's why art should be valued more, because it allows people to start thinking outside of the general norm of academia, of just purely, thinking of sums or everything. Like, there has to be a way of encouraging people to think, to start looking at everything from different angles. Otherwise, that's why you run into this wall when you're trying to find solutions to. Yeah.
Speaking of the education system, obviously my experience being in high school, I remember So I specifically didn't want to do, because you can choose art as an elective, right? I specifically didn't want to do art because I guess the arrogant, 15, 16, 17-year-old that I was, I didn't want someone else telling me how to do art, because art for me was simply self-expression. So can you imagine someone telling you how you should express yourself? It's like, no. Obviously, I wasn't thinking of art as a career. So for other classmates, if they did art and they were thinking of it as a career, fine. What I wanted to do was I wanted to be more along the storytelling side of things. I actually wanted to be a writer. Mm-hmm. And I remember a teacher of mine, she asked me this, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? I said, I want to be a writer. And she said, no, you should become a doctor. So disclaimer, great. Doctors are great. Not for me though, not necessarily. Okay, so I said to my teacher, I said, but it's not, I don't know, 16-year-old Jared. It's not what's in my heart. So deep. And she says, change your heart. I'm like, what? And so now it's like, you know what? I'm definitely not going to become a doctor just because of you. Yeah.
And to ride on what Jared mentioned, if we recall, for Malaysians tuning in, if you recall, right after the PMR or PT3 examinations, when you're 15, you go into your final 2 years in high school, and you get to choose. Do you want to pursue science, or do you want to pursue commerce, or you want to pursue arts? And oftentimes, those who do well in the PT3 or PMR exams, you automatically go to science. Mm-hmm. But where are the students being thrown if they didn't do so well? Immediately to the arts. Mm-hmm. So that in itself dictates that arts are for the not so bright and science are for the brightest. And I feel that that's a wrong thing because I always believe that science and art should be a symbiosis. It complements each other like a yin and yang. It shouldn't be science is science and arts is arts. It should be all both together. And I hope that in the future, we're able to take a little bit of science because it's essential. Take a little bit of arts because it's essential too. Yeah. So I hope we don't get to be, in Malay, we say, berat sebelah, you know? So make it a holistic education system. Yeah, a lot of people say, follow the Japanese, follow the Finnish, and follow all these other countries. But you know what? Let's have an education system that fits us. It doesn't have to copy another country because we're not Finnish people. We're not Japanese people. We're not them. So let there be an education system that fits the way we think, the way we live our lives, and make it holistic.
Yeah. Do you think, obviously I wasn't educated in the system here, but I've heard a lot about it and I've talked to a lot of people who've been through it. Like, do you feel that it's kind of outdated in its, like, it seems very structured to a time that was long ago in the way the lessons are conducted and even not just in Malaysia, worldwide, there needs to be a change in the dynamic of education and the way classrooms are constructed and people have to adapt to different learning styles. But what's your thoughts with the Malaysian?
I'm going to jump in.
Go, please.
I'm going to say the most obvious thing that I can think of is here we are living real life and thinking about all the things that we wish we were taught in school, right? I wish I was taught how to save money.
Yeah.
I wish I was taught I wish I was told that computers and technology would become so embedded into our lives that actually coding was necessary, not just as an elective, but actually as a core component. Obviously, that falls in the line of forecasting the future. Fine. You can't tell the future, but there are other simple things like, okay, so here we have kemahiran hidup. Yes. Even that is kind of split. You either do KMT, which is like woodwork, electrical stuff, and you have ERT, correct? ERT. Obviously, which one did I do? which is like cooking, baking, sewing, needlework. I don't know.
I got an A for that. It's fun. It's
Yes,
fun, yeah.
exactly. But the thing is, why do you have to split it?
Yeah.
You should learn all
These
of
are like
it.
all practical
These are
skills.
all like literal everyday skills. No, you might not become a tailor. You might not become an electrician. And yes, if you have something that requires electrical fixing at home, you should call an electrician. But if you're just tinkering and whatever, then these are good skills to have. Okay, maybe a bit more practical are other things that I haven't mentioned. But certainly those are the things that come to mind when I think of how my life would be if only they taught X, Y, Z at school.
In the defense of the education ministry, right after SPM, there are plenty of institutions that students in Malaysia could go. And a lot of them, I notice right now, are geared towards skills, which is great. I hope that in the future, these institutions that really promote skills would be somewhat integrated into our secondary school system. Because why do you have to wait until you're 17 and then decide which skill that you want to concentrate on?
Yeah, SPM, STPM, so A levels, O levels equivalent. There's actually a lot.
Yes.
A lot of
Too
subjects
many.
that you can choose, which are not part of the standard curriculum, but you can do it. If only you are told about it, or have a teacher who is qualified to teach it and they can tell you about it. So I think it's more of being aware that these options exist. Mind you, it has been a while since I was in high school, and things have changed. I think certain things have been addressed.
Yeah.
But coming back to the whole, it's arts or it's science, I think that kind of still happens. And labeling, putting things in box, categorizing accordingly, and then kind of being stuck with that. When really you should pick and choose as you see fit.
Like your co-curricular activities, you know? I want to join this club. I want to join that club. It should somewhat be like that. And people do that in universities. As long as you have your electives in a row and as long as you stay within that course of study, then I hope, again, going back to critically thinking, that our students, once they're 16 and 17, will be able to critically think what they want to do in the future so that they choose whatever subjects that would be useful for them in high school and then go from there.
Yeah. Critical thinking, communication, how to speak to someone. No, we're not talking about public speaking. Well, that is an important skill.
Even
What about just
acknowledgement.
simple?
We fail in acknowledgement.
Yes.
I mean, how many times, Dane, do you go to KK, you line up somewhere, there's a stranger in front of you, there's a stranger behind you. I'm sure in Australia or even anywhere around the world, they would at least do a nod to acknowledge the person in front of you or in the back of you. You don't have to talk to them. You just acknowledge their presence. That's it. You look at them in the eye and you just nod and be done with it. But over here, it's like people are invisible. We don't care. We drive
Like just
erratically.
ghosts just living in the
I mean,
house.
obviously, guess who is in hospitality out of the three of us? But just simple civic mindedness.
Yes.
I mean, it's important. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Are you part of the community or not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I wish we would see that level, that higher level of civic consciousness. It's becoming absent because of technology, because of our dependence on computers and phones, that we segregate ourselves from people.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's another benefit. Like, I'm just looking for the silver lining of this pandemic and everything. You know, people being forced to acknowledge their communities and support each other because you just are cut off from the outside. Hopefully, it's helping people to do that, to step up and to start to see how important their neighbor is. You know, and acknowledge one another.
Yeah.
Here's a funny thing about neighbors, because we did a poll on Twitter on our radio station, and we asked this question: during the MCO, did you interact with your neighbor? 70% of people who actually responded to that said no. I'm shocked. shouldn't that be a time where you get to know your neighbors? Or maybe they had fights. I don't know. I don't know.
Everyone's scared of getting arrested.
Yeah. We in the 80s, I remember semangat kejiranan, getting to know your neighbors, both on the left and right, front and the back, at least trying to get to know who lives in your community. So that semangat kejiranan is something that we should have more right now.
I think definitely with my neighbors, probably not, especially because the house right next to me is abandoned, probably haunted house. So no, thank you. But definitely I got to know, or at least the uncle in the grocery store got to know me and my shopping habits and what keropok I like. So I think definitely, while not immediately obvious in interacting with neighbors, there definitely was a little bit more of strengthening the community feel, because I mean, normal day-to-day running around, I probably find myself in town. So I'll pick up groceries from this other store. Whereas MCO, it's like the same store that I'm going to. It did happen for me. So I don't know how I would have answered on your poll. You?
Not really. I didn't even see my neighbors come out of the house to be
honest. Yeah.
like rarely through the entire MCO. So I didn't really get the opportunity. And I only have neighbors on one side, but yeah, there were. I suppose everyone was like scared to come out as well.
And I think we should also acknowledge people who actually lost jobs during the MCO, and we can definitely empathize with them if they feel like, I just don't want to see anyone because I'm going through a serious time. And I like to acknowledge those individuals if they're watching this, and we're not here to just chat that, hey, things are bad. Things are not great for certain individuals out there. So my thoughts are with them. And if there's a way that we can help these people to try to get back on their feet, why not? And I hope that a show like this will be able to inspire people to, go out there and make things happen for other people. And especially now when we depend too much on technology and things like that, as you mentioned, finding the silver lining, make it better. Use technology so that we're able to be better human beings, make the community better. So I hope that we're able to do that.
Yeah, I guess that's why I'm trying to that's why I bring up the MCO on it, because it's very current and relevant, but it's also like what you said, it's not just to dwell on the negatives, but we have to learn a lesson. I mean, I personally think the whole world should have been better prepared in the first place, and we just weren't. And especially the governments and the leaders of the world, they really let the communities down. But I feel like as individuals and as communities, we need to make sure that we learn these lessons, because who knows what the future holds.
I think the COVID-19 pandemic situation throughout the world, I think we are starting to really see the true colors of certain leaders. I don't want to mention names. But people have seen it in the media. And myself, as a radio broadcaster, we have to, report numbers and also give thoughts on where is this, based on our readings, obviously, where is this going to lead us, that sort of thing, more of an opinion thing. But there's just a handful of people that you can look up to in this pandemic. And the countries that we thought were prepared were not prepared. And I hope that we are able to learn lessons from that.
Especially from the countries that managed to act early and do what they needed to do, while not necessarily great to experience. Nobody likes lockdown, but it has its purpose, it has its function, and provided it's done properly, then it can be effective and be worth it. So I think some countries, obviously which countries, some countries did this.
Say, can you see?
So just about learning. So not only learning from those who didn't do so well, but learn from the ones that actually deserve the recognition for doing quite well. Well enough. Silver lining, talking about environmental impacts, that we saw during MCO, like, ooh, we can see the Himalayas from India, first time in 30 years. Can we still see it though, now that everyone's outdoors again? Ooh, dolphins in Venice.
Yeah.
Are they still there? Or now that everyone, I don't know if Venice is still under lockdown, but assuming that they are back, just like we are, are the blue skies still there? Are the beaches still clean?
Yeah.
Will we learn our lesson?
It's like a glimpse of what the possibility of how life could be.
Yep.
Hopefully people reflect long enough about that. Like the glimpse, that's why I say it's a glimpse. I mean, actually, it's a farce as well to say it helped the environment, because there's been a huge uprise in plastic production. And
Yes.
just yesterday, I was talking to someone from a hotel here. They were telling me it was a hotel that had a very good environmental rating. Like they've been taking a huge step. And they said like most of the actions they've taken have been backtracked, like 70%. And to the point that the overall company is like pushing them to, they can't use refillable bottles because it has to be plastic. And even telling them they can't use, they have to use plastic cutlery, or their cutlery has to be wrapped in plastic.
Yeah.
Which
So-
makes no sense. Like it's got nothing to do with
Everything now for hygiene purposes is single use. Obviously, I'm not going to go into a debate about good or bad or whatever, but it just so happens that this is the format that has been dictated. This is how we fight COVID-19. Fine. How long is it going to last, though, is the question.
Yeah.
But also cutting budget to actual environmental initiatives. So like these businesses, whether they're hotels or whatever, sometimes they have recycling programs, but then because of MCO, because of pandemic, everything's tight, if they've managed to find a way to survive and they haven't closed down or they haven't sacked all their staff, chances are all these initiatives that we wish they would keep going are the ones that suffer, are the ones that cut. So not only you have single use for hygiene purposes, but also they're not doing the other things.
But I also feel like it's a bit of a cop-out calling it for hygiene purposes. I feel like it's just a convenience purpose, It's like so convenient to make everything plastic, and then you can just throw it away rather than having to actually have cleanliness in your service and
that's,
washing things properly.
Yes, washing. I mean, obviously what it comes down to is sanitizing.
Yeah.
You can use, what is it? Cutlery, masks, whatever, PPE. You can use it and throw it out and not have to worry about sanitizing it, or you can use reusable whatever versions of it. Again, I'm not a qualified medical practitioner or a doctor.
But we're not in a hospital. Do you know what I mean? Like we're talking about everyday life.
Correct.
I understand in a hospital there might be a different story, but the problem is the enforcement that they pushed was like we're all in a hospital, but we're not. And it was treating us all as though we're already contagious, which I understand you have to take precautions. But what I'm saying is, they didn't even try to think it through or to think about the environmental impact and think maybe there's some things we should promote. Instead, it was just like, let's just give a blanket coverage, like everything go to plastic, everything, wear these disposable masks. And this is, to me, it's a huge disappointment. It's a major backstep for the world. I mean, you can see the amount of masks showing up in the ocean now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And talking about your exhibition, I think one of your entries, one of your artists who actually did an exhibition, showcased the amount of trash that she picked just from her neighborhood. And you're talking about, just imagine that you're in a room and you pick a corner and you pretty much put all the plastic bags, single-use plastic, straws, those packaged boxes that we get from the delivery apps, and the corner is filled, and it's just a little corner of a neighborhood. Can you imagine what trash will be like for that whole?
Thankfully, because the nature of the exhibition, we could include installation art as well. That was one that I definitely wanted to see highlighted, because no, it doesn't fall in the same category as someone who spent the last 3 months painting a picture. but it's certainly something that needs to be addressed. And because not all art is pretty. People have different definitions of what art is or should be or whatever, but I think art should at least start a conversation, not necessarily between two people, even just within yourself. And that was one conversation that I wanted people to have.
That realization.
Yeah.
And that was important. And I hope that anyone who saw that exhibition will immediately realize, we always talk about being mindful these days.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go back to where we were before. We were very concerned about using single-use plastic and bringing our own reusable bags to supermarket. Where did that go?
Yes. So that's the thing. Reusable bags. What's stopping us now from using reusable bags? What's stopping us from using reusable cups when you go get a coffee, a takeaway coffee, or bubble tea or whatever? Technically, okay, you're handing it over to the person. So there is that potential spread of COVID-19. But there are ways to minimize that still. So yes, it is a little bit of an easy way out just to...
Yeah, but usually like if for Starbucks, for instance, they've always, whenever you hand them your cup, they wash it anyway.
Yeah.
They always sterilize it. Like that's part of their SOP, like before the pandemic. So it's cleanliness is just...
Yes. If you really wanted to have an issue with the reusable cups, reusable bag that the cashier then holds and handles and put your groceries in, or you put your groceries in. The same thing can be said about the doors and the pen.
Yeah.
The pen, so okay, a lot of people use the scan. They will scan My Sejahtera app or Sabah Trace. If you really don't want that, well then remove your door so people don't have to touch it or use some kind of automatic sliding door. Because people still have to sanitize their hands after they touch the door, after they touch the pen.
That's what, there's only so much you can actually do anyway.
Yeah.
The rest of it is just purely, what's the word? Like pseudo, where you just take I can't remember that. It's not real. It's like just making you feel better.
Oh, right. Placebo.
Placebo, that's the word. Yeah. So most of it is a placebo, I feel. And I mean, this is why I think we need to have conversation about it, because clearly the world was unprepared, like drastically unprepared, but also like it's going to continue to be unprepared if we don't think about it. Like we talk about raising the collective consciousness of things, like even the whole shutdown, we say, okay, we shut down, we save lives, but did we? How many people died because they were in abusive relationships at home, or they didn't have money, their finances have run out, they've turned to drinking, so did we save anything, or did we create more problems? So like, I'm not trying to like put down the decisions. I understand it was like a response that was made to a fast growing problem.
Yep.
But if we don't sit and talk about it now and think, okay, what could we have done better? Then how's it going to improve?
Remember the Doraemon thingy?
Oh.
There was a poster that was out, and it was I think the issue was trying to appease family members. And there was one particular poster talking about husband-wife relationship. And I think it was one of the spouses telling that, you should be kind to him or her, and try to use names like, a certain character from a Japanese animation. So it's like, it's setting the wrong tone. It's name calling and also trying to demean women.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what it achieved. At the end of the day, that's all it achieved without actually addressing the issue. I mean,
there still seems to be a very backwards attitude in
Yes.
Malaysia towards the like opposite sex. And,
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so what if the husband, yes, he's stuck at home, deal with it. But how are you asking them to deal with it? You're not addressing the husband, you're addressing the wife.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I mean, yeah, I'm sure that might help, but there are other things at play.
Yeah.
Talking about being unprepared. Okay, we've had a lot of, we as in the human race, have had a lot of, we've had pandemics in the past.
Yeah.
Okay. How come we haven't learned?
Exactly.
Okay. Maybe there's something special about this situation. There's a lot more travel, so things can spread easier. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
But, economy, the moment you shut people out, And if you were depending on those people outside to support your economy, what then?
Yeah.
So not only unpreparedness in terms of stopping the virus, but also unpreparedness in supporting your own economy.
Yeah, over dependency on certain
Yes,
countries.
on just money coming in from outside rather than the local market, which obviously is, yes, you want to talk about art, you want to talk about any kind of business, who your market is. And of course, one big one is tourism.
Yeah.
Tourism in Sabah.
Which we've all been affected, and hospitality as a
Yes,
result of
indeed.
tourism.
I mean, I feel sad for a lot of my hospitality industry friends who were laid off, and they were scrambling, trying to find out, what am I going to do? How am I going to put food on the table? I don't have a job anymore. It also highlights on a lot of things involving human capital and also, importantly, human resources. I think it taught a lot of people about the differences between a contracted employee and a non-contracted employee, your rights as a person, as part of labor. I think a lot of these actually were highlighted. And quite frankly, a lot of people said, you know what, had I signed the contract or had I known about this, I would have planned something else. And that is because they did not know much about human resources laws affecting them. So I feel sorry for a lot of my hospitality industry friends. But thankfully, the people that I've been in touch have sought greener pastures elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I hope they're well. If they're tuning in, good luck to each and every one of them. Seriously, it's a tough industry to be in. I've been in the hospitality industry before. When I was in the States, we faced a recession. I thought my job was going to be on the line. And it was sad to see my colleagues who were there before me at that property who had to leave. And suddenly, because of, the situation. So again, back to tourism, it also highlights how much we depended on tourism. And if we study the statistics, tourism is number 2 of bringing in revenue to the state, apart from agriculture. I've spoken to a lot of people in tourism, and yes, there are many things that they have to do right now. I wish they will not just depend on trying to attract people from a certain region.
Yep.
They should, in Malay we say, or in English, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I think the eggs were just from one particular region.
Yeah.
And that particular country was the country that started, unfortunately, So where do we go? It's not a safe environment anymore in tourism. So I hope that as we go forward, as borders start to reopen soon, that we think critically, how do we want to market Sabah?
Exactly.
How do we want to attract quality tourists who would come here, appreciate our resources rather than destroy or mock our resources? I miss having people from the UK, Europe, America even, but because their governments placed a lot of caution to our state because of recent events that happened that cost some lives. And I hope that restrictions will be lifted and that marketing of our state will involve safety.
Yeah.
And I feel safe. As a Sabahan, I do feel safe. Unfortunately, there are people out there who don't feel safe coming here.
Well, I'm been here 7 years and I've never felt unsafe.
Yeah, I mean, the one, assume that I know what you're talking about, the latest USA categorization of Sabah because of, so including the word terrorism, kidnapping, I think.
Kidnapping,
which
yes.
then brought it up a level in terms of warning, travel warning. Of course, I mean, you were in Lahadatu just last week or 2 weeks ago. Kind of like the law, contract law, and people getting laid off and knowing your rights. I wish I learned that at school. Just simple how to read a contract. Never mind writing a contract, but understanding a contract.
Yeah, it's all these essential things that we don't actually learn in school.
Yeah.
Not to say the other things aren't essential, but there's a huge focus on certain subjects when, there's so many other things that we could be learning,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like going back to something we were talking about before too, is we saw a severe lack worldwide in proper leadership, like just good leaders making good decisions for the benefit of the people that they're supposed to be serving, So, hopefully people will start to think about that, like how to, what it really means to be a leader, and how do we ensure that there's people who are not just self-serving, but
Yeah, definitely everything needs a holistic approach. So if it's talking about domestic violence or talking about, you do one thing only to aggravate another issue because you're not thinking about all of it in one, you're just addressing one thing. You're putting out fires as you go.
Yeah.
You're fighting fires as you go. If it comes to choosing a leader, obviously you hope that the leader that whether we chose or not, the one that we get hopefully has a holistic approach to all of these things. No, not all the issues might be relevant to you or me, but for the wider community. And technically, I think all these things that we touch on are wider community things.
And that's one skill we should learn in schools.
Exactly.
Leadership.
Yeah.
How many times have we sat in a classroom and we are taught to speak out on certain issues? That's leadership. How many times we were told to gather 10 of our classmates and have a discussion of 3 major questions to present in front of the class? That's leadership. How many times do we have to do that? Very few.
Yeah.
And even when we participate in clubs, we always give way to those who speak out more. But what happens to the ones who are timid? What happens to the ones that they might feel like, oh, I might want to give it a shot, but I feel like I'm not worthy enough? Trying to push people who are introvert, like myself. I think I'm an introvert before. Yeah. But because of the nature of my job, I have to be bubbly. I have to be out there. It's draining.
It's a skill.
It's a skill.
Whether you like it or not, depending on your relationships, depending on your job, it's something that you have to learn to do, whether or not you like it. Hopefully you can learn to like it. Because obviously if you don't like it, there are many ways that you can do it not so effectively. Not everyone who speaks out gets their message across, because sometimes the way that they do it ends up pissing people off.
So leadership is something that I wish is taught to everyone in school.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that goes also, the message goes back to branding and what we're talking about before. I mean, that's like what Ben was talking about, personal branding, as well as other things, because it is, you're giving an impression, like everything you post, everything you put out is giving an impression of yourself. And you do have to think about, like, what do you want people to know or think about? Because people can only deduce from what they see. Like, we're all limited and we've all got so many things that we're busy with ourselves. So that's why I kind of understand your point that you made earlier as well. Like, messages have to be clear. And I think we have, even extroverts need to learn that skill, Anyone who has to learn. No one is a natural born public speaker where you can just get up and talk. Like, I mean, you can do it, but you're not going to sound very good and the message isn't going to be clear. It's learning how to overcome the communication barriers that people have, how to appeal to different ways of thinking and different, intellect. So these are important skills.
Wow, heavy topics today. I'm drained. Should I have a drink or something?
Oh yeah, you need a drink. Sorry, I forgot to.
No. Like, I mean, it's great. We must have these conversations. And I'm very pleased to see people like you, Dane, and a slew of other individuals who are doing shows like this. And I can relate, because when I started broadcasting 2 years ago for KK12 FM, my show centered on highlighting individuals, Sabahan, so those who love Sabah, who are, making it happen, so to speak. Their stories are important. Their stories are important. I think Sabahans need to learn from their stories. And I think that whatever that we have been through these past few months with MCO, RMCO, are stories to learn so that we can become better. And I hope that people like you and all these individuals who have the ability to collect all of these stories will continue to do that. That's an art form. And these are important stories that I hope will be lessons and inspiration to a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, the point of starting this show, I mean, I'm not going to say I know what I'm doing, but the point of starting is just because I also believe that communication is essential, and there's just not enough of it. I mean, the right type of communication, like we're talking, not just throwing out a post into the wind and ranting about something, but actually talking with the point of how do we get a solution, or at the very least, stimulating further conversation within the community. Because sometimes people I understand also, we get so preoccupied and busy with our lives that we don't give thought to these other things that actually affect us in the long run. Like when we're talking about the environment, people are so busy. And I know a lot of people, like we're talking, just struggling to make ends meet because they lost their jobs, whatever. The last thing they want to think about is, the environment. But the reality is, if you don't think about it, it's going to come back to bite you. Because we're sacrificing for the sake of one issue of, a virus, which was only slightly more deadly than the flu. It doesn't make sense to burn the entire environment. And in the long run, then maybe if we escape it, the next generation won't, And we're talking about much more severe consequences than a virus.
Yeah, I think if I remember, I hope I'm not just making this up. If I remember how the tactics were in terms of messaging, 10 years ago, it was always focusing on future generations, for our children, for your children, for your children's children, blah, blah, blah. It's us. So if that couldn't motivate people, if the idea of their children having a good future couldn't motivate them to do things better, actually, it's affecting us. So, I mean, when it comes to selfish people, I mean, obviously we can all be selfish in our own ways, but when it comes to selfish people, they don't have to think about their children, because all of this is actually happening now.
But the thing is, like, the longer you put things off, the worse it gets. And it's just it sounds like such a simple statement, but it still seems like people don't understand that. Even earlier, I was talking about the problem, like with environmentalists, usually they give it like a 10-year plan, but there's no guarantee that the same government's going to be there in 10 years. So a 10-year plan, and then you get to 10 years and then nothing happened. Then what, you put another 10-year plan, and it just, where does it end?
We keep passing the buck. We keep sweeping things under the carpet, and hopefully in 5 years, 10 years, another person will take care of it. And again, we're going back to leadership, having that political will or trying to start a movement. It has to stop somewhere. So the buck stops here. So when we want to talk about environmental issues that mean a lot to us, we have to address it now. And it's sad to see a lot of countries, especially President Trump, who has spoken out about not supporting any environment. I promise I don't want to say any country names, but we have to mention.
I know.
That's the most obvious. Let's address the white elephant in the room here. So
he's not in this room.
So there we go. If we keep passing the buck to the next leader, the next generation, then this conversation is going to go on and on and on until our children become teenagers and become married people and become grandfathers and grandmothers, and we will have an endless conversation about this.
That's assuming that things go endlessly, because what we seem to miss is that everything is finite, So we keep assuming that, like, okay, we'll have these things, but it will keep going on as normal. I mean, it won't. The world, the earth, the environment is getting worse. All the science and data is proving that every day. And even like last year, we lost one species of the rhinoceros.
Yes.
I mean, that's just one species, and it's a big creature, so we know about it. There's so many other insects and creatures that we don't know about
Yep.
that are just rapidly declining. The rate of extinction is phenomenal. I can't even remember the statistics. So I'm not going to say it, but I know it's like in only like one lifespan, it more than half.
Yes, we are in the 6th mass extinction event caused by us.
And this is what I'm saying. So, like, we can't assume that things are always going to go on as normal. And you assume that your kids are going to have this conversation. Maybe they won't even have the luxury of having the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
This is why it's like, when is it going to be urgent enough to have the resolve to take the action? Like recently I was talking about even the need to reclaim land, like we understand the need for agriculture and everything, but then there's certain areas, strategic areas of forest that should be reclaimed. And then the thought was, well, it's expensive, but yeah, it's expensive. But then if you don't do it now, it's going to be more expensive.
Exactly.
Expense is not going to go away. It's only going to increase. Like all these problems, the rebuttals and excuses are given. Actually, they haven't got any strength to them because they only get worse as time goes.
Yeah, I think it's the reliance on old mindset, old methods.
Yeah.
So, we want to talk about renewable energy versus non-renewable, right?
What do you call it? Just
coal, petroleum, fossil fuels, gas, etc., etc. Obviously, they still power our world, and they will continue to power our world as long as we rely on them. So it's this like,
this excuse.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a classic example in Australia, which like is so disappointing. Where at one point the government they gave a rebate system. So if you installed solar energy, then you could get like a certain amount of your tax or of your I can't remember how the system worked, but you get a rebate. So actually it would benefit you. And also it was cheaper to install the system because solar can be quite expensive.
Yep.
So they had such a huge response. So many started installing these solar systems that it started affecting the fossil fuel industry, that then they backpedaled on the decision.
Yep.
And they said, well, no, you're overloading the
grid.
The grid.
Yeah.
Overloading the grid. Well, if you're overloading the grid, that means you cut back on the fossil fuel, so it's not overloaded. No, they didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it was like there was this really good initiative, and it was pushing in the right direction. But then these big corporations are still given too much say and voice. Like there's not enough strength in the leaders, and that's the different thing. Like even when we talk about here with palm oil being one of the biggest industries apart from tourism, and it's necessary. And what they don't understand is like a lot of people who speak out against palm oil don't actually hate palm oil. I mean, the tree is good and we understand it, but it's making the right decisions to make sure that it's not being dictated by those companies who only have their interest at, and that's what you're talking about, like having leaders that can see the entire picture and make sure that things are fair for all these industries and all the future generations. Yeah.
I mean, the thing about palm oil, obviously it's so controversial, but I think it's often more controversial than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Especially when decisions are being made not in a transparent manner. No, I don't have the stats on me right now. I'm not going to show you pictures like that, Trump.
But you had a flip chart something back,
No, but I got my phone there. But obviously, correct me if I'm wrong. Palm oil itself, the actual product, supposedly the yield per acreage is so much more. What's the word? It produces more. It produces more per land area than the next best thing. So what is then the problem? It's not the product, it's the method, it's the approach.
Yep.
Obviously, that goes with anything. It's not just palm oil. It just so happens that palm oil has become the face of the demon.
Yeah.
But the demon actually is unsustainable
Yes.
practices, suddenly wanting to cash in on whatever the new gold mine is, and just felling forests, clear felling forests for the sake of this new cash cow.
Exactly.
Without thinking long term, without thinking, well, what are you getting rid of? What was the value of that? Yeah.
And I think also what you mentioned, like about it kind of being a taboo topic. And this is another reason, like, I think we need to have a conversation. There shouldn't be taboo topics. Like, making a topic taboo restricts the conversation about it, and then restricts the way that
there's no improvement.
Yeah, there's no improvement. And like, as long as you, like, I understand also being just overly critical with no reason or like direction, but what we need is real strength in conversation that we can talk about all these different topics in a way that, okay, how do we progress, or to maybe bring to light the different stories of people from the other side of you that aren't being heard, you know, different communities. Because like I know even when I first came to Sabah, I was very open to the idea. Many people said, actually, the local communities want palm oil. They love palm oil. So I was open to embracing that. But then as I traveled around Sabah, I heard a very different picture from the communities that directly affected by the palm oil. And, you know, it just wasn't benefiting them. It wasn't helping them to develop in the ways that the message was being told, you know. So
I hope that more sustainable practices are being implemented. And I know that a lot of these plantations are trying to gear towards that. And I hope that it will benefit not just, you know, in terms of raking in revenue, but most importantly, touching the communities. I was emceeing a major palm oil event. I think it was last year or 2 years ago. And I think there were several countries throughout our region converged right here in Kota Kinabalu to talk about how it benefited these communities if these plantations were to practice sustainable steps. And I don't think it was done in a very flashy way to try to polish the unpolished, but I can genuinely see, like, there are several areas in Indonesia, in Vietnam, where communities actually benefited immensely from the industry. And I hope that I'm not as lucky as you, Dane, to be able to sit down with these communities, especially in areas like Lahad Datu, Semporna, in the East Coast, which I hope more Sabahans would actually go and visit in the East Coast, because it seems like it's a foreign land. But to sit down with them, and hopefully that if these stories are told to the local leaders, to whoever is responsible, that they hear them and take action from it.
There's no question, there's no doubt that palm oil industry provides jobs. But the thing is, as with any kind of agricultural or agroforestry industry, it's a long-term thing. You don't just plant a tree and then you harvest and gain profit in the next 6 months. It's like, I don't know, 5, 10, 30 years. So obviously the seed has been planted, in the 80s, the 90s, and only now certain people are able to cash in on the investment that they have made over such a long period of time. But what about other industries, or never mind other industries, what about just making it more sustainable? So it's not about stopping palm oil. It's just doing better, because it's such a long-term thing. Think long-term.
And it's in the end, sustainability is about thinking long-term. Thinking about like both the immediate effects, but also, you know.
And obviously, we're talking about this, not meaning to discredit the actual very real world initiatives happening right now, maybe experiencing setbacks because of MCO and current situation, but there are initiatives out there to ensure the sustainable certification goes ahead. And one of them is 2025. By 2025, the plan, the vision, the goal is for all of Sabah to, whatever palm oil comes out of Sabah, it's a jurisdiction certification. So every single plantation owner, estate, or anyone who grows palm oil will be certified. And obviously how you go about ensuring and monitoring and whatever, that's a different question. That's part and parcel, but that is the goal. 2025, here we are, 2020, we've got another 5 years. So there are initiatives.
Yeah.
But obviously when it comes to other products, whether they have such good initiatives and good goals and aims, I don't know. So at least palm oil, no matter how much of a bad rap it has, at least, I mean, mind you, this is Sabah.
Yeah.
Within the Malaysian context, I think Sabah wants to be a first.
Yeah.
So that's good. It's promising.
At least they're thinking of it. And I know that they do support other programs and NGOs, a lot of the palm oil industry. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, we're not trying to demonize anyone or any industry, but there has to be that discussion to make sure that the things are, and both parties understand both sides of the story, because going the other way and just saying everything with palm oil is good is not also benefiting everyone, because you're not hearing the other side of the story, and we need to adapt. I mean, it's not, palm oil is just one example.
Yeah.
There's so many others. Like, even in the community I grew up was all sugarcane.
Yeah.
You know? And then when you look at places like Brazil with the Amazon rainforest, then it all went to sugarcane and soy, and they wiped out, it's just unsustainable practicing.
Yeah.
Agriculture has to change the way we view agriculture, not just palm oil, but every major crop in the world has to change to be more integrated into nature and to make sure that it's not destroying the soil and destroying the environment and so on. Yeah.
So agriculture, tourism, industries, we talk about raking in revenue.
Yeah.
And I hope that it will benefit both sides.
Yeah.
We are seeing it being too one-sided.
Yeah.
And I hope that in the future, as we talk about, along the lines of leadership, expecting new ministers right here in Sabah in the future, talking about the future generation, that we look at these things holistically. And at the same time, when the revenue comes in, it trickles down to the people.
Yeah.
It trickles down to,
It's about
the Rakyat Marhain,
It's
basically.
about fairness.
Us.
Making sure that there is, like, because right now, and I know that's the other thing with big crops, is that a lot of times it's only a few people that benefit.
Yes.
And get the majority of the wealth and the profit.
Especially,
but it's everyone's land. You know what I mean? Like,
Especially if a particular transnational global corporation brand has got a permit to exploit whatever natural resources are in a particular area, that is for the benefit of that brand.
Yeah.
And the locals, while maybe it opens up for some job opportunity, it's depleting the resources and it's not thinking sustainably.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously, it's not the case for all, but certainly it's not that hard to find bad cases. Just like voting for this upcoming election, what people need to realize is that they have a say when it comes to these industries. Everyone has influence purely in their consumer behavior.
Yeah.
You don't want to see this product, you want to change the way, well, then stop buying it. Or never mind the negative approach, never mind boycotting, you support the ones that are doing how you want to see, what you want to see. Same thing goes for art. Same thing goes for entertainment. Here we are having this show, and it's so refreshing because it's a KK show. It's a Sabah show. We don't have to rely on KL. We don't have to rely on Semenanjung and, whatever, jumping through hoops just to get our own local content. So definitely what people do, whether they use reusable things or disposable single use, that essentially is their vote for what they want to see or what their values are.
Yeah, but it's helping them to understand that too, because some people just like, again, talking about thinking more about it, they don't understand the
connection,
the connection of the choice you're making. Just recently, I was talking to a friend about in Sampurna. He was telling me about they did a beach cleanup, and then right after the beach cleanup, like all these kids got involved and everything. They clean up. They all sat down, ate ice creams, and threw their wrappers into the ocean.
So it defeats the purpose.
Like, but there's something missing. There's like a connect that's missing. Do you know what I mean? And so that's the other reason of having these conversations, because it's kind of helping us to connect the synapses of, and to understand that everything is connected.
Yeah.
You know, like we're talking about all these industries, and it might seem that we're just like jumping subject, but actually everything is connected.
Yes. And I mean, you don't even have to pick on rural communities to, you know, it's our own communities. We have litter bugs in our own communities.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to cigarette smokers. Obviously not everyone's like this, but cigarette butts out the window on the car, from the car. People who say that they care about children, they care about safety, and their child is in the front seat, no seatbelt, or on their own lap while they're driving the car. So yes, I feel like there's no other explanation other than there's just this simple disconnect.
And this is like thing. And then we take it to the broader scale of, we're talking about COVID-19, the pandemic. And that's why I was saying that the actions were taken without thinking of the connection of everything.
Yeah.
You know, and we think like, okay, we're going to, you know, wrap everything in plastic and do this. But okay, but what is the long-term effects of those choices? And this, you know, these, there has to be more thinking and planning involved, for the future, you know, because the consequences of just constantly making rapid decisions without thinking of the future is not looking very bright.
Addressing the symptoms rather than.
Yeah, that's it. It's reactive. It's reactive, but it's not actually like addressing the core problem, you know, and that's what we want to look at. Yeah. But, anyway, thank you so much for coming along. I mean, there's a lot more things that we can talk about, and I'm sure I can have you along at a future show. Yeah.
Thank you very much for having us.
It's great to be here. Congratulations on your show, and hopefully it will benefit our, you know, viewers. I want to say listeners just now. I feel like I'm on radio.
It's also a podcast.
Okay, great,
Yeah,
great on Spotify. Yes.
Is there anything else, like before we wrap it up, that you would like to say to, you know, your fellow listeners or Sabahans, and is there any message that you want to stand out? I mean, because we talked about a lot of things and we kind of skipped over a lot of topics, but is there a fundamental message that you would like to?
Well, we bark a lot, you know, not us, but Malaysians, Sabahans. We are unhappy about a lot of things. We are unsettled. We are discontent with major things, issues. And I hope that as we try to make a change, we also have to realize that we have to be a participant in it. If you want to change something, go out and vote. Participate in an NGO, volunteer, sit down and listen. I think we tend to put our opinions too much out there on the table, or try to impose opinions on other people, but we fail to understand, we fail to listen. And I hope that as we go through the remainder of 2020 and heading into, hopefully, better things in 2021 and beyond, let's sit down and listen more.
True.
You know? Listen more, understanding more, empathize more. And that way we're able to make good decisions.
Yeah.
And the decision will not just benefit the decision maker, but also the people who are affected. And if we talk about nation building, we talk about building a better state, I think we need to listen more, understanding. And I hope that it's something that we do more often.
And not being so reactive to, but actually taking time to understand them and why they might have happened that way or been said that way. Yeah.
Definitely. So just now, earlier, Time for ice cream.
I know. Can I have an ice cream, please?
What Ben mentioned earlier about funding opportunities, and I made a joke. I said, shh. Okay, so basically, what I'm hoping can happen is that Pillars of Sabah will have a third, will continue. Should the community want to see it continue, I also hope that it can continue and I can do my part. So in terms of having opinions and being judgmental and just being a lot of talk and not necessarily taking the time and the effort to understand what needs to be understood. It's not just one thing. Everything is connected. You can't just address the symptoms, but you have to address the cause. Definitely Pillars of Sabah is a project that, like I think most projects, most anything that we do, is a project that has had its faults. No, I'm not going to go into detail about it, but whatever comes next, definitely first on the agenda is understanding and addressing so that it being a project for the community can actually do what it needs to do to be actually for the community.
Yep.
So that's what that was about. And
Well,
yeah.
I hope so, man. And I hope you both keep, I'm glad that I'm able to have this opportunity to talk to you both, because I think you both are similar in the way, like you do your radio show and you've talked to a lot of different ones and you're getting those stories out there. And in the art community, you're doing the same thing. You're ensuring that these artists are having their voices heard and
Yep.
the stories are getting out there, which is the reason behind the show as well. So I really appreciate you both giving your insights and your input, and I'm hoping we can continue to have conversations in the future. Also that your own projects people can know more about them. And yeah, is there any like way you want people to find you, like on Instagram or?
Well, two in particular, my personal page on Instagram, ben.uzair. You can also follow my musings on KK12FM. So that's 89.5_KK12FM. And you can hear my show. Am I promoting myself here?
No. I want people to know where they can hear about it and hear your discussion.
My show, Make It Happen, goes on air on 89.5 right here in KK on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 until 1 with repeats on weekends. And I also co-anchor the morning show. So if you are on your way to work on weekdays, do tune in between 7 and 9 in the morning, also on 89.5.
Awesome. And Jared?
I sound like a radio person already.
You can hear the experience.
how people can find me. So unlike you two, I'm just a normal person on social media.
So you're saying we're not normal?
No, you guys are at that influencer.
Okay, I'm with you, you know.
Well, okay, fine. 1, 2, 3. So I'm proud of that. Because yes, I happen to appear in front of camera a bit more now and on Ben's shows whenever I have something to say or I think I have something to say. But when it comes to my social media, it's just literally all my personal stuff. Jared Abdul Rahman, Instagram or Facebook, whatever. I think how you get in touch with me, should be fairly obvious whenever there's a project I'm working on. Hopefully enough people are talking about it, whether it's Masked, Pillars of Sabah, or what else have I been involved in? Yeah, I don't know. I look at him because usually he tends to be involved.
Don't forget that art installation in front of the Hyatt Regency Kinabalu, which was brilliant, by the way.
Yes. So like that Hyatt mural, they tend to have their own hype and buzz. So yeah, I may or may not be involved. But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
I try to support whatever I can.
Awesome. We'll keep on doing it, man. Keep on supporting, and hopefully people keep on supporting you as well.
Thanks.
When you see the posters, the art projects happening locally, make sure you share them and make sure you support. So yeah, thank you again to both of you for coming along. And for you guys who are listening or watching, please make sure you subscribe to Wzzup Borneo on our YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. Also, you can find me as Orang Putih Kita. So thanks for watching or listening, and stay tuned for another episode.
Hey, sama lah kita.